And obviously during that time, your pro career, like I said, those finishes that you was racking up. Was there where was you based kind of early on in the pro? Because obviously Lions then closed up. So where was kind of home for you at the start of your pro?
Well, I mean, I was training with Jimmy a little bit. He had, a lot of boxing training on the go. I was still doing my training at RJ Gracie for jiu-jitsu. I was doing various training with Sid for wrestling.
Yeah.
I always train alone as well. I do a bit of a Tony Ferguson. I like to skip. I like to punch with dumbbells. I like to move. I also think, I've got my own style. I like to just be in my room and practice in slow motion, my form, and I do a lot of training on my own. But that was the people I was training with back then. But I'm always progressively. Now I'm training with Modestus, for example.
Yeah.
So like as the time periods go, it's been interesting to just see how my training methods have changed, and I feel now I've got the absolute best training camp I could possibly get right now as we speak. So it's good. It's good. But even back then, really, really good. And that's the objective. Always making the training camps better. Always getting more good bodies. Always improving. Always figuring out how to get yourself better.
Yeah. So you fought for like some of the best regional promotions, Fight Star, I think as a pro, ROC again, UCMMA, and then obviously you signed to Cage Warriors, which was especially at that time was a massive signing. Like he was a highly touted prospect. What was it like coming into Cage Warriors, that roster? And it's kind of everyone knows that is the league. That is where you take that step up to eventually take that goal to the UFC. What was it like finally getting there?
I knew as soon as I joined Cage Warriors, I had a lot of hype. I had obviously Jimmy. I had a lot of wins. I was undefeated. I had a 9-fight win streak, and I was talking. I was saying, I'm going to go and get this belt. So when I entered, I was seeing who they'd give me. It was hard to get a matchup at the start. There was hype. And then they got me Dario Bellandi, who was a 2-time European IMMAF champion. So he was never going to be an easy fight for anyone. But on 2 weeks' notice, same for him, of course. But that was a hard fight to have on the debut. And then after that, Christian Leroy Duncan, another hard fight. Got third place in the IMMAF. Another title. I think I had a lot of fights at amateur. A lot of experience at amateur. But I had a lot of good high-level sparring. So I although I had a 10-fight win streak at that point fighting Duncan, I also had a lot of high-level sparring. So I thought, I can get this done. But again, first fight, I wasn't happy with the stoppage of Dan Overheady. We had the rematch. He won fair and square.
Yeah.
But I felt, it is what it is, but we're going to come back from that. I learned a lot from those fights. He had a very good striking style, his switching of stance. There were just things to figure out a little bit from that. But I took pride in knowing I had good moments in that fight. I nearly ripped his leg off.
That was quite early on too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I heard noises, but anyway. Then after that fight, we moved on to the next fight, and I had Nicolas Latev as the comeback fight to come back from my loss, my first ever loss against Duncan, and obviously, that was where I showed you, the switching stance. I changed my style for that fight. If you watch that fight, it wasn't a lot of striking, but you can see my movement changed when you watch that fight. You can see it, and I'm quite happy with that Zlatev fight. I look good in that fight, but going to try and improve and show a more updated version every fight. But that was a fight where I felt like I showed progression from the Duncan fight to the next fight. Just you can see in the movement, but yeah.
Just wanted to go back. Those early fights, I know the Duncan fights definitely, but were all your fights? Obviously, you said you had 2 weeks' notice on your debut. Were they all behind closed doors? Is this this is pandemic time, right?
I had to sign with Cage Warriors. I wanted to have a few more fights regionally, and just keep going a little bit more. But there was no other place to fight but Cage Warriors. Everything kept getting shut down.
Sure.
I just tried to fight on Probellum, and then that got shut down. So it was literally a week before it shut down. No COVID testing, so a lot of shows no longer allowed to be hosted. It was a real annoying period, obviously, for a lot of people, yourself included.
Yeah.
You know, you already told me about the shit you had to go through. So, you know, a lot of people got messed about, and I definitely got messed about. But I had to join Cage Warriors, and that's a great thing to do. You know, join Cage Warriors, the place to go to the UFC. But I would have probably wanted to go a little bit later, but it was what it was. Went there, and you know, I'm very happy with the experience I've gained so far since joining.
And what was that like for you? You know, you're growing up, you're a fan of the game. You know, obviously you've got those goals. You know, I want to get to the big stage and, you know, fight for a Cage Warriors, a UFC. And I guess when you're in your dreams, when you're imagining this, there's going to be fans there. You're going to have friends and family, and then obviously you have to kind of take this on at a time where everything's just uncertain in the world, and like you're talking about the COVID testing, there's no fans there. I imagine obviously your training was affected. How was that to deal with, especially for like your first fights on that?
The training for the Dario and the first Christian Leroy Duncan fight, a lot of that I trained in my own flat.
Right, I did speak to Stefano about this.
You know, my parents owned the flat, but they had like a room in the flat made as a gym for me.
Yeah.
And you know, I've got videos and footage of me training in my flat during COVID, and yeah, that's where I trained for a lot of these fights. In my lounge.
I asked Stefano about this because I know he was one of the guys that was coming through training with you.
He was living with me for like a long period of time, like 2 months.
Because you had like the mats on the wall. So tell me about that experience, like who was passing through, because obviously you had a few more training partners come through. And
just literally, you know, I had me, Kieran, Ghost, Victor, we were all living in the flat together, training, doing our own sessions, because obviously, you know, you can't train anywhere else, so we do our own training together. And yeah, it was just a situation where people would come and go because they obviously knew people who also wanted to train. So we ended up being like a martial art hub where people would go to train. So I live in like a residential block of flats and stuff. So people would just see MMA fighters arriving like a gym, like what's going on? You know, it's a flat. But you know, you got to do what you got to do to get the skill level up. The power level has to rise. You know, so we got to do what we got to do.
That's it. So after the second. So at the second Duncan fight, is this where you start working? You're doing some work with Brad Pickett and GB Top Team?
All Stars was the gym that I trained with for the second fight camp. I did start working with Brad, but GB Top Team wasn't established at that point. So I ended up just going straight to All Stars because I knew Duncan was a good fighter. I was like, I need to prepare hard for this, and I trained really hard for that second Duncan fight. I was like very zoned in, locked in. I trained for 10 weeks in All Stars, like 6 days a week, 3-4 times a day. It was mad. It was genuinely like a concentration camp for MMA. You know, close, but still didn't get the job done, but a really good experience. And I definitely leveled up after that camp and the fight, definitely.
Did you do any like, was you like a full-time member of GB Top Team, or was it one of those ones that you was going there for like?
Yeah, I paid the membership and stuff. Yeah.